Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another issue of NAIC Insight Series. I'm Bob Green. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Investment Companies, and I am so excited today to share the next hour with my friend, someone that I look up to and admire, JoAnn H. Price, the co-founder and managing partner of Fairview Capital. Welcome, JoAnn.
Thank you, Bob. I'm happy to be with you today.
Oh, and I'm obviously happy to have you. So for those that don't know, my relationship with JoAnn goes back some 18 years when I was a consultant at Arthur Andersen, and I attended my first NAIC conference at Ojai Valley. JoAnn won't even remember that. She was up on stage working, but I was sitting in the audience and I'd been invited to come check out NAIC. I was invited by someone who would later become a mentor to me, Terry Jones of Syncom, and we'll talk about Terry in a little bit. But I was amazed, and JoAnn, I never got to tell you this. I was amazed. I sat in the audience. I attended every single session, and I just remember reading the bios, reading the program. Like everybody at their first NAIC conference, I didn't know a lot about the industry. But I soon learned a lot, and it was very difficult to learn anything about the industry without a lot of the stories coming back to this fabulous woman with me, JoAnn Price. So JoAnn, first I want to start. I want to start with today, and we'll have plenty of time to go back into the history and talk about a number of other things. But tell us about your firm, Fairview Capital Partners, what you all do, and then maybe we'll come back after that and find out how Fairview came to be.
Well, Fairview Capital Partners is a fund of funds, and we invest in private equity funds, and we do some co-investments, and we also do some legacy work as well with existing funds around the country. We have been in business now 25 years. We have $9.7 billion under management since inception. And we've got 25 investment professionals. We have an office in San Francisco, actually one in New York. And of course, our main office is in West Hartford, Connecticut. The firm, when we first started, and of course, as you know, it's an outgrowth of the work from NAIC, which I assume you'll get to. But it was very important that we develop a firm that was diverse in the first instance. And of course, my co-founder is Lawrence Morse. Mm-hmm. And that was important because what we proposed to do at Fairview was to make sure that there was diversity in the industry. And it is difficult to do that if you're not diverse yourself. And so that is what we spent 2.5 years basically looking to raise Fairview Capital. And so today we do a variety of things, but one of the things that we have done successfully is to build next generation emerging manager programs for institutional investors. We started the firm primarily with institutional investors and public pension funds. And so over time, their requirements in terms of what was necessary with respect to our practice, making sure we had great compliance in place, making sure that they felt that we were equipped to handle and do the work for institutional investors. That was a major benefit and a plus for us in terms of how you start, because the foundation on which you build actually is very important as you continue into the future. We all have things that happen. We try lots of things. We do this, we do that, but the foundation has to be secure and firm. So Fairview Capital is national and international to some extent. And we are very pleased with the work we do, not only with that, but with high-end venture firms. We have a large practice in with respect to venture as well. But we are very proud, and we were created basically initially to really look at emerging and next generation managers.
So JoAnn, when I hear you talk about $9 billion in assets under management and 25 employees and multiple offices around the country, it's just extraordinary because I do have an opportunity regularly to understand what Fairview is doing, but talk to us a little bit, because I think that depending upon how you interface with Fairview, you may know different Fairviews. You guys do a variety of things very, very well. I know that the diverse and emerging manager investment strategy is near and dear to your heart, but let's talk a little bit at first about the venture work that you all do. I've heard the term used before, hard to access funds and select access funds, but you guys are really at the center of a number of things that are going on in Silicon Valley. Can you talk a little bit about your venture strategy and what you do there?
Certainly. So our venture program started about 20 years ago, and we had an opportunity, unique opportunity, to move into venture with our initial strategic partner, which later sold their firm and sold their interest back to us. But they had tremendous access to the best venture firms in the country, and they made sure that they vested those relationships at Fairview. So as a result of that, Larry Morse, my partner, Kola Olifin-Boba, Alan Matramana, all of them are on advisory committees of many of these firms that exist today all across the country. And then as a result of that, even a couple that we were not in and we looked to be able to access, we had to be able to show them that they would be in good company with the venture funds that are part of our program. So we've built it over time. We've maintained it. We have developed a great relationship. As you can imagine, we're the only diverse firm in the country with that access and with those high-end organizations. But I will say, in addition to that, we have also been able to be there to help, even with those firms as they're looking for diversity and changing and increasing some of the employees and what they're trying to do. We have become excellent mentors, and to be able to, over time, develop excellent relationships with respect to some of the things that they are trying to do. So that program continues. We have done the venture program for the state of Connecticut for since 2004. And so we are their primary, I guess, solely venture investor on their behalf. And so we have been investing for a number of years on a single client basis, and then on a commingled basis as well.
Very good. Give us, since we have time, let's hear a few names, JoAnn. Some of the folks, just short list of some of the folks you're invested in, the Silicon Valley venture type firms.
Well, we're investors. Let me just sort of begin to think of them. We're in battery.
Okay.
We're in. I'm just trying to think. There's so many.
So Battery Ventures, very well known firm.
Yes.
Are you in Spark?
We're in Spark. Yes, we're in Spark. We're also in on the West Coast.
Graycroft.
Yes, we're in Graycroft as well. Bob, you know the port good. I thank you for helping me.
I did my homework, JoAnn.
We're in Graycroft. Yes, we were actually with Graycroft. We were in their first fund.
Yeah.
They had come to visit us, and we knew the professionals at that firm. Yeah. And so we were comfortable being an initial investor in that particular fund. And of course, that has made all the difference over time. So we're in, I'd say, 25 to 30 of the best funds in the country.
Yeah.
Some were allowed to use their names and others not sure. in this type of form. And that's why I'm hesitating, because I don't want to trip over myself and indicate a name that I should not have indicated in the first place.
I understand, and I hope I didn't get you in any trouble.
No, you didn't.
Okay. Well, the neat part for me is when, and we're about to shift into the diverse manager piece, but when I think of the creation of Fairview Capital, when I think of you and Larry Morse in the early 90s, with a pitch book and a PPM setting up this firm, the vision that you had, two, Howard alums trying to pull it together, you really don't think that, you're going to be on Sand Hill Road and in Menlo Park investing in firms that literally, these are firms that have checkered the internet with extraordinary companies and household names now. And congratulations to you and your firm on that success.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bob.
Yeah. So now, JoAnn, let's shift to the diverse manager programs. And it's funny. These have been called many things over the years. They've been called. I prefer diverse owned. They've certainly been called minority businesses. I can't hear someone say emerging manager without thinking of my mentor Terry Jones shaking his fist and being so upset about being called emerging. But whatever you call it, the opportunity to give people of talent, capabilities, and passion capital to invest, and to invest in deals that they choose, that they have a high conviction in creating returns. That's the business Fairview's been in since its inception. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
So the name, let's start with the name, JoAnn, and then I'll ask you the story about how it came together. How did you come up with the name Fairview Capital? Because to this day, as much as you've evolved, it's still extraordinarily representative of who you all are as partners and people.
Well, when we first started when we knew we were getting ready to close on our first fund, and we were sort of trying to figure out what that name should be, we kept going back, and the name was used, and know that when you cannot use that name, you cannot use that name. I said, boy, it's a lot of work just trying to get a name for a firm. And then as Larry and I began to sort of talk about it and think about what would be best, we came up with the Fairview. We're fair, and we have a fair view perspective on the business and what we're trying to do. So that's where the Fairview Capital came from. A little corny, but as you know, I am corny. Actually, but the Fairview Capital is where we landed, and we're very proud of it. I think it's an appropriate name for the firm.
No, it clearly is. And for 25 plus years, that's who I've come to know and know you all to be. Okay. So it's 1991. JoAnn Price, I believe at the time, was running a trade association, and this idea is bubbling up, and you're in a board meeting or you're in some setting, and the idea comes up that the industry needs to create a fund of funds. So
that is correct.
I'm going to hand it to you there. Tell us the story.
So we were at a board meeting, and actually Syncom Capital had established a private equity fund at that time.
Okay.
And they had a fund of funds that was an investor in their fund. And so as that conversation was going on and debating and so forth, how to do it, what to do, Herb actually came up with, we should basically
I'm sorry.
Funds.
Who is Herb?
I'm sorry, Herb Wilkins.
Herb Wilkins of Syncom.
Herb Wilkins of Syncom, yes.
Yep.
And so he said, well, I think what we should do is a fund of funds. And of course, I didn't even know what a fund of funds was, but as he discussed it, the fund of funds that was an investor in Syncom was Bigler Investment Management Company.
Okay.
So after we started on that process and the board decided that was a good approach to take, they decided, then they went out to begin to look for a person, an individual, to head up this new venture. And we felt that we needed to do that. Plus we needed to get a strategic partner early on, so that makes sure that we would be able to develop best practices. So that's the process that began. And several of the board members, took to the road looking for somebody. And at the end of the day, they did not find anybody.
Okay.
And part of it, of course, you can understand, was the issue of risk. Some of it was just not enough data or information to see whether or not this could be successful. That's important. But in any case, after a year of searching, it was not successful. So what happened was, Herb Wilkins called me on the phone and he said, JoAnn, I have come to the conclusion that you are going to have to do this.
In his comparative style.
Yes, in his style. And I then hung the phone up on him. And then on Monday morning, that was a Friday, on Monday morning, he came in. He said, am I welcome in here? I said, it depends on what you want to talk about.
Right.
And so he came in and I said, well, you know what, Herb, I'm happy with the work and the job that I'm doing, but I will give it some thought. And then, of course, Herb had other people to talk to me over the course of time. Yeah. But what happened ultimately was I did decide to do it. The reason is that I had a belief system.
Yeah.
I believed in the industry. I believed in the people that were in the business, and also I believed in what they were trying to do and what they were looking to build. And so that is what ultimately made me decide to do it.
Got it. So one of the things that I was a bit obtuse about, the nonprofit association that you were working for, what was the name of it?
The nonprofit association was, initially?
What's the name of the association that you were president of before Fairview?
Oh, National Association of Investment Companies.
So you worked for NAIC. I'm just trying to build it up.
Oh, yes, that is correct.
So for our audience, the backstory is JoAnn, for a number of years, was the president of the NAIC. And so now, JoAnn, we're going to pause on Fairview a little bit, and I want to go back, right? So we have you at NAIC, 1991. You guys created the initiative that was to create Fairview. You went out, you raised the fund, but there are a lot of stories in there that I want to go into. And the first story I really want to go into is back to my first NAIC conference at Ojai in 2001. The chairman of the organization at that time was an amazing person. He had a PhD in philosophy. You don't see that every day in the finance industry. He was an amazing scholar. He could have taught at any university in the country, Yale or otherwise, Harvard, any of them. He was a Howard alum. I believe he hailed from Florida originally, but just an extremely classy, professional person. And he'd tell me to stop if he were on right now because he's humble as well.
Yes.
Tell me about Lawrence Morse, your partner, how you guys came together to form your partnership, and what you've come to learn about him as a person over the years.
So of course, I knew Larry over time because he obviously was at a investment company in New York. And so he was part of the association. Mm-hmm. And so we were having dinner actually at the Bombay Club in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And he was looking at a variety of opportunities that he was thinking about pursuing. And so we were having dinner and talking about, where he was thinking and what he was thinking. And I'm listening. And then I literally, during the conversation, it was like a bulb just burst.
Okay.
A bright bulb. And in the middle of what he was saying, which I do not even remember what he was saying, mm-hmm. I asked him, I said, Larry, would you consider being my partner at Fairview? We were close to having raised the first fund. We were not quite closed yet. Mm-hmm. But I felt that it was very important that the company really start with two people. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was critical in terms of us building a secure foundation. So when I asked him that question, he was in a state of shock. But if you know his personality, he took time to see whether this was something that he wanted to do. He felt like this was going to be or would be his last stop along his professional career. I didn't know that at the time, but he later told me that. Mm-hmm. And so he did his diligence. He did it for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And finally, he wanted me to meet his wife, who I already knew, but right. in a different way. He wanted to know about my family. He wanted to make sure that our relationship would be one that would be able to be would build over time. And so by the end of all that, he became comfortable. And that, of course, says a little bit about the two personalities. One where, just popped out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And in his particular case, he took 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's how we became partners. And it has been, so it's 26 years. Cola told me yesterday, 26 years. But I will tell you that the mutual respect that each of us enjoy with respect to each other is phenomenal. Yeah. And you could not find two people that are more different in terms of approach and personality and in many areas.
Yeah.
But in all of those years, in
Mhm.
all of these years, we have never had spoken a cross word to each other.
Yeah.
There has never been an issue of trust ever. And we've always come to consensus, whether we agree or disagree or however we've come to it. That has always been the case.
You know, knowing both of you, and I agree with you. You have very different personalities, but there's some extraordinary commonalities: a commitment to excellence, a care and regard for people, a care and regard for truth and honesty. There are so many areas that you're identical, frankly. You share the same views, but yes, approaches are very, very different. You've run an association, so you know sometimes you have to get up on stage unprepared and you just have to say it. You have to ask people to do certain things, and you have to play. Association heads have to play on instinct and feel a lot of times. And the thing I've come to learn about Larry is he's extremely thoughtful, right? He's contemplative and he's measured in his approach to things. So how do you, this one is going to be a bit off the wall, but as you think about working with young firms now and you look at, you know, the multiple partners that come in and want to have a conversation with you, how do you evaluate partnerships when you've had this extraordinary partnership for 26 years, no issues of trust, no coarse word, no any of that, any of those negative things? How do you evaluate and get to a level of commitment that you want to invest in younger managers as you observe their partnerships?
Well, number one, you have to be comfortable in working with people in the first place, regardless of the age or anything else. And you have to be able to respect people, because respect is critical in anything that you do. And then, of course, it's about trust. Mm-hmm. So with respect, and I can speak for myself, with respect to working with young people, I do that on a regular basis in any case. That is part of my personality. In addition to that, I am in everybody's business. I get close in, and everybody who knows me knows that. And that is actually absolutely the case with some of our managers that we work with. Mm-hmm. And then over time, we've got a tremendous team at Fairview of every age group. So it actually starts at Fairview when you get down to it, because if there's not mutual respect within our own firm, and also respect for their people's opinions and viewpoints and assessments, you can't really build a firm successfully. So we have to also realize that many of the firms and some of the firms that we reach out to, develop relationships with, come from all of the professionals at Fairview. So that's also part of it. But you got to be able, I mean, that was part of, when you get right down to it, Bob, that's really part of why we started Fairview. Mm-hmm. Is we realize that it's that we can't stand still. Yeah. Everything is in constant state of growth. And so that has to do with your racial identity, that has to do with age, that has to do with all aspects of building a company. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer, and thank you for the candor there. So let's go back. I want to, if you will, I want to do sort of a speed round where we name some people and you give me your reaction to some folks.
Okay.
Is that okay? Yeah. So JoAnn, you'll laugh about this. I've been at NAIC off and on for 17 years now, and I will do programs and panels, and invariably someone will come up to me and ask me, did I found NAIC? And it's the funniest question, because with a 50 in front of NAIC these days, I don't know how old they think I am, but I wasn't old enough to found NAIC. But what's also interesting is people believe you founded NAIC, which is also not correct.
That's correct.
So there was an association when you got here. So who is Pat Jacobs?
So Pat Jacobs was actually the person that was recruited to run, at that time, it was the American Association of Mesbics. Mm-hmm. And she was a counsel to the Senate Small Business Committee. Okay. And she was recruited to run this trade association that was in its early age at that point, and just trying to develop and redevelop. And so when
I'm sorry, just to put a timeline in place, this is, for her, it's the mid to early 70s, correct?
For her, it was 1977.
Okay, 77. Okay.
77, I think it was. So she accepted the position.
Yeah.
And then we were both working on Capitol Hill. She was with Senator Javits
Okay.
As a counsel to the Senate Small Business Committee, and I was with Senator Schweiker
Okay.
on the Hill. And so when she started, right thereafter, she approached me and asked if I would be interested in joining her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was young as well. And I said, oh, what the heck, might as well. And literally, that's how much thought I gave to it. and we had one other person, Dorothy Sankey, who worked for Pat. So it was the three of us. And she had a long career on the Small Business Committee as well. Yeah. And so we found an office, and we had a board that kind of helped us get organized. Yeah. We were funded primarily by the MBDA at that time. Yeah. And so there was a lot of work to be done. But the funny thing was when we started, and I said, oh, wow, I'm running a real company. Mm-hmm. And my husband said, yep, all chiefs and no Indians.
James is right.
So that's how it started. We had a number of very interesting things. It was a good thing we were young, because I'm not quite sure we would have been able to, move and do some of the things that we needed to do. Yeah. But it was quite a trip. But anyway, so Pat was the initial very brilliant woman. Rockefeller scholar. She was brilliant. Yeah. And so she was the first president. Well, she was not the first, but she's the first official president of NIC.
So in an environment today, when I'll be candid, as an association head, we still have an enormous challenge getting women into the business. We have a major initiative going that you're working on. Thank you. Focus on getting women in the business, moving them up the career continuum, and then helping them create their own firms. You ran that full gauntlet, JoAnn. You came in the business on the association side, obviously, but you moved into the fund management side. You've worked with countless numbers of fund managers and entrepreneurs. And Fairview, a portion of it is very much a woman-led firm, a co-led, however you and Larry term it. But you did that. And it's interesting because in an environment today when we have so many women that are going to B school and working in investment banking, we still have a challenge. What's your view on why we still face a challenge with women in the industry?
I think part of the challenge is, and that is changing. So there are organizations that were created and developed to really begin to bring more women into the industry, and so that is happening. Yeah. I would say primarily in with respect to NEIC in the beginning years, I think the issue was more not so much that they were not willing to bring in women, but I don't think it was felt at that time that there were a number of women that would be interested in being a part of NEIC. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, and I will say this, I do believe that there were questions in the early years about whether women are going to be able to stick with it. Now, this is the prejudice piece. Sure. Are they going to have families? Are they going to get pregnant? Are they going to do this? There was all these qualifiers, right? In the early years, which of course, as you can imagine, with my personality, I used to tell them that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Right. But that notwithstanding, those were some of the issues that we dealt with in the early years. Now, with respect to NEIC, the other piece of it was that the organizations were relatively small, looking to be able to build, in terms of capital under management. So that was a challenge in the early years. And then also, and I think this is a big issue, is that folks were looking at survival and the NEIC years and being able to build in that way. And then it was a very multi-ethnic association. And so you also had some ethnic differences with respect to their perception of women. That started to change over time. I never stopped talking about it. They were sick of me, actually, in that area. But I think that was critical. I think now we're seeing changes. Mm-hmm. We're seeing more women begin firms, start firms, build firms, and some of the large. And I also think women we'll see even more women in the venture capital side of the business. And I think that'll be that will be great. I think I think in many ways they're bigger risk takers.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a huge benefit over time. But as you know, at Fairview, we are very insistent that we are looking at gender diversity, ethnic diversity, and that's always been a part of what we've done. And we pull people in proactively to do that.
So, JoAnn, a bit of a risk question, but one of the things that I used to always see them do on Soul Train is they take a famous performer like James Brown or Stevie Wonder, and they say, well, who are the young managers or young performers that impress you? Who are some of the women? They don't necessarily have to be young, but they probably are in comparison. Who are some of the young women in the industry today that have impressed you and that you're looking forward to seeing their careers play out?
Daphne Dufresne comes to mind immediately. Yep. And she's one that I've had a relationship with over time, but she's building a fantastic career. Evelise Monty, which is a new firm. And I'm very impressed with her story and her commitment to the industry and the business. Ulu, which is a partnership there that we invested in recently, and I'm trying to remember her first name. But anyway, I was very impressed with her and her not only just her, but her background and what she's looking to do, which I think is going to be extraordinary. So I think we're seeing more women, and I think we're seeing diversity. Probably with respect to women, we're seeing women that are both of all ethnic persuasions developing. So I think I'm excited about it. I think we're going to see more and more.
That's really neat. So as a fund of funds, you sit between capital allocators, so-called LPs, and you work very closely with direct investment managers or GPs. In our prep session, I asked you who was one of the LPs that came to mind first for you, and you mentioned the Honorable Denise Napier. Can you talk to me a little bit about Denise and your relationship with her and what she meant to Fairview over the years and the industry?
So I met Denise Napier when we located in Connecticut. I did not know her in advance. Of course, everybody thought I knew her. Two Black women.
What's her role? What was her role then, JoAnn?
Oh, I'm sorry. So she was the sole fiduciary at the state of Connecticut.
So she was the elected treasurer.
The elected treasurer at the state of Connecticut. Yep. Yes. And so I met her when we moved to Connecticut. And then over time, I developed a relationship with her because obviously she was the treasurer of the state of Connecticut. Yep. And that was an important relationship to develop. And so when it came time, she was making a change. She, was elected because we started Fairview before she was treasurer.
Right.
So she came in while we were in business, but at that point we were in Connecticut. But she was making a change in her private equity program, and one of them was her venture fund of funds program, and she was getting ready to put that program out to bid. And so at that point, we had developed a pretty good relationship, and I felt that we needed to compete. It was competitive, absolutely competitive. And if you knew anything about her, she was very serious about her treasurership and making sure that people were able to compete. So we competed and we won the competition, and we had a chance then to take over the existing fund that they had and begin to and actually that was interesting because one of the things we did there was to be able to keep the funds. It was very important for them to make sure they kept their best funds and did not lose them in the transfer. Okay. So that was something that they had to assess. But what happened after that, as the relationship developed and she saw the work that we were doing, we competed going forward for a succession of fund of funds because they do all of their venture investing through a fund of funds structure. Okay. So we continued to compete. We've been working with the state of Connecticut since 2004,
Mhm.
and we do all of their venture investing. I will say about the treasurer, I always made sure that we adhered to her principles, and she had excellent principles, and wanted to make sure that you were going to do everything that she required as a fiduciary and as a state treasurer. And so we always did that. We never took anything for granted,
Mhm.
and we made sure of that. So over time, we have been a trusted. We have been trusted by
Mhm.
them. We have maintained an excellent portfolio for them. We have added firms to the portfolio.
Mhm.
And when she wanted to do some additional things, change up or whatever it was that she was interested in doing, we made sure we were able to do that as she requested. So that relationship and trust that she developed, and I have to tell you, because Denise Napier did not in any way compromise her principles or anything to do with her job and her responsibility to the state of Connecticut.
Mhm.
But she believed in Fairview.
Mhm.
She believed in what we were doing, and she was comfortable and confident that we could produce an excellent program and excellent outcomes. And we have done that, and we have done that throughout all of the relationships that we have had with Connecticut in terms of providing and making sure that we created top tier
Mhm.
venture program on their behalf. So she's extraordinary. I have the highest respect for her and her work, not just with respect to diversity,
Mhm.
with respect to how the work that she did across the country. I think that she was a tremendous treasurer, and she was out in the forefront.
That's it's amazing to hear you tell the stories about Treasurer Napier, to know that we you use the word belief, and that word is so central to NAIC, and it's so central to the firms that have been a part of NAIC, because we people often ask us, why don't more people invest? Why, you do the performance study, and it doesn't change anything, and it does come back to that word belief. And I've come to understand that it's hard to change people's beliefs. They want to believe in something. They look for evidence to find the reason to believe in it. And they don't want to believe in it. They find that as well. But when we find trustees, treasurers, investment staff that are focused on and committed on providing capital, it does start with their belief.
It absolutely does. And I can tell you 100%, if I did not have a belief system
Mm-hmm.
in the fact that we could have invest successfully in the areas of diversity,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to locate and build and be a part of seeing diverse managers grow and be successful over time, Fairview would not have been successful. You've got to have a belief system. It doesn't work without it.
Yeah. So, JoAnn, I've been putting off asking you about this particular individual because I know that he was an important part of your business career. We've talked about Larry Morse, your partner, but you spent a lot of time working with a person that, unfortunately, as big as he was, a lot of the young professionals don't know about him today, and that's Herbert P. Wilkins Sr. Um, Tell us who he was, and then I'm going to come back and ask you some more questions about Herb Wilkins.
Herb Wilkins, I think, is one of the most brilliant men I have ever met.
Okay.
He was able to do things that many others could not do. He was able to see out into the future like no other. He was brilliant. He was rough and gruff. He did not suffer fools easily. But he was a trailblazer in the area of communications, from radio to TV to the internet to cable. He was
Wireless.
there, wireless. Yes, he was there from the beginning to the end, and he was there initially.
Mm-hmm.
So he was one person in the country that opened up an industry that in some ways didn't exist before Herb Wilkins.
Okay. So Herb Wilkins is a graduate of the Harvard Business School. Apparently, he was in a pretty famous class. It was the class of 70. And I'm told that at the time, that was the largest entering class of African Americans. There were 24, 25 of them. And Herb described that class as being sort of a Hall of Fame. There were just an amazing number of them in there. But Herb Wilkins came into the industry. I guess he was an accountant by training. Talk to us a little bit about the early days, because I want to get him to urban, and then I want to move him to Syncom. So how did Herb get into this?
I don't know how he got into Syncom, to be honest with you, because that's when I met him while he was at Syncom.
Okay.
But I will say that when I met him, he was at Syncom at that point.
Okay.
And it was interesting because he felt that he was building not just a firm, but an industry.
Yeah.
And he had the foresight and the ability to see things in the future, to see things that had not even happened, but he felt that it was that was going to be the next phase. And he was just extraordinarily brilliant. He just had ability, and people. He was gruff. He was rough at times.
So you keep saying that. What do you mean by that?
Well, he would bark. He did a lot of barking.
Yeah. He would do that to you?
Oh yeah, he barked at me regularly. I didn't care.
Okay.
And in fact, I leaned in as well with him. So that's why we were such good friends. His wife would say often, "Well, there you two go."
Yeah.
We would go at it on a regular basis. But I just never allowed. What I did not allow is I never allowed Herb's personality or because underneath it all, he was a very caring man. He wanted to see people succeed, and he had a belief system in his people. He believed in his own people, and that is a recipe for success. He believed.
Yeah.
And I had the utmost respect for his perspective and how he went about producing what he was able to produce.
Yeah. Excellent. Anything else you want to say before I move on? I mean, we can talk about, so we know that he was an investor in Radio One, TV One, BET. I'll give you a quick opportunity to talk about another one of your longtime colleagues. Herb had a longtime business partner at Syncom. You recall his name?
Terry Jones.
Terry Jones. Okay. Talk to us a little bit about Terry Jones.
Herb and Terry were perfect bookends.
Okay.
So when Herb was yelling and screaming, Terry would basically say, well, that's Herb's approach, but if he believes in what you're doing, this is going to be something that we can do together. Okay. So Terry Jones does have an outstanding personality. Also a very brilliant gentleman. I actually had a very close relationship with him as well. When they saw me coming over to Syncom's office for one of my interactions with Herb, they would all, they said, oh gosh.
All day.
Here she comes. Yeah, here she comes. But I have to tell you, between them, they built a tremendous company, and they were a perfect match for each other. In some ways, when Herb passed away, I felt really bad for Terry, because when you work with somebody as many years as he worked with Herb, to make that transition without Herb, I'm sure for him was quite an effort. It was for me as well.
Yeah.
But they were a perfect team, and they built a team, and the investing that they did. And I'm sure you could reach out to Bob Johnson, who he worked with, and they were very close.
Yeah.
To many others around the country, in terms of the entrepreneurs that were created. Kathy Hughes, yes, yep. Kathy Hughes, all around the country that would say what I'm saying about Herb Wilkins and Terry Jones.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent. So let's talk about another one of your managers. You work so closely with all these folks. Apparently, again, another Harvard MBA. Willie Woods. Talk to me a little bit about Willie Woods, and you backed Willie's first fund, and I think you've been with him ever since.
That is correct. So Willie Woods was coming out of an investment bank, looking to move into this industry, and he, which was a great pick, actually. Very confident young man as well. And so we spent a good bit of time with each other as they were putting together and formulating their first thesis, their first venture fund, or not venture fund, it was a private equity fund. And so Willie and I spent a lot of time together. And the one time that they came up and sort of talked about, well, here we are, and this is what we're looking to do. And I said to Willie, Willie, you've got a little more work to do. You got a ways to go. And he looked at me, he said, I cannot believe you're saying this. I said, yes, I am. And you'll be pleased that I did. So Willie,
so sounds like he was very coachable.
Oh yes, Willie Woods he's an outstanding. He's helped many others along the way as well. He has a certain humility about him, which I think is critical. You don't always see that in this business, but Willie Woods was there, and I actually was close to his wife as well. And by the way, I will say this one thing: when you're running a trade association at that time of all men, you learn that there's certain appropriate ways and to conduct yourself with respect to a professional organization. And so I made it my business to really develop close relationships with all the wives.
Right.
And that was very helpful to me, because when they were acting, unusually crazy, I was able to go to them and say, help me out on this. What should I do? And so that relationship, and so therefore I'm saying this because I'm actually close to Willie's wife, Mona. So that's been good. But Willie Woods is an excellent investor, and he's done very well, as you know.
He has. Outstanding. So JoAnn, let's talk a little bit about current affairs and what's going on with the world. A lot of protests this summer. It was somewhat akin to another long, hot summer, and we saw some scary things on TV, and we've seen, I'm sure you would agree, we've seen some things about our country that are not encouraging, right? They're a little bit disappointing. But I'm struck by the number of calls we get at NAIC saying, hey, I want to have a conversation. I'm ABC company, or I'm ABC large private equity firm. I want to have a conversation and I want to do something. What would you say if you were me talking to some of those companies about what they should be doing now to help people of color that are aspiring as entrepreneurs or investment managers?
If I were in your position, and I'm sure you're doing this, I would speak to every single one of them, and then I would lean in and challenge them to do something significant.
Okay.
Not just a conversation. Of course, you want them to think through what they should do, but you want them to get to a point of doing something significant and helping them to be able to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the trade association's job.
Absolutely. And of course we're doing some of that, but it's quite extraordinary, the folks that are calling in now and the things that they're hopeful about asking. I'm struck though at when I hear your stories about the SBIC program, when I hear your stories about, managers like Peter Thompson and Devakar Kamath and Don Lawhorn, the challenges that they faced. As Terry's fond of saying, it may be a different kind of but it's still what. The more things change, there's a lot that stays the same. And I'd love to get your perspective on, are we at a better place than we have been or not?
That's a very interesting question, Bob. I think that each generation there is progress. We don't want to say that there is no progress. But what I think is disappointing is that we have gotten accustomed, we people of color now, we have gotten accustomed to doing things in a certain way, not just doing it in a certain way, but accustoming ourselves to This is just the way it is. And so therefore, there's certain things we can't say. There's certain things we can't do. This is the road you have to travel. If you have 2 lanes, you may have 2 lanes for a while, but then it'll go back to 1 lane and you got to make the adjustment. But you're always making the adjustment. You are making the adjustment as opposed to we are making adjustments.
Right.
And that, I think, was what was so major to me this time around, to think that in broad daylight, you could put your knee on someone's neck.
Yeah.
And people, many people were watching. And now we know with cameras and everything else, you should theoretically assume that it was being taped in some way. But yet it actually happened. And you keep thinking, and then there's more and more and more and more. And you say to yourself, what is it that we have, and why is it that we have accustomed ourselves to this type of behavior over time? And that's what, to me, made me stop. And I've always been, as you know, Bob, I lean in.
For sure.
And if I have something to say, and if I want to do something, I'm coming right at you.
Yep.
You can stand in the way, then I'm going to try to walk right over you. But I'm coming at you, not from the back, but I'm coming at you from the front. And so there's no one that's been more assertive in that sense. Even with Fairview, Fairview was going to happen one way or the other.
Right.
And I was determined. So it's not that. And it's not that a lot of people have not done that. If we know, we wouldn't have some of the successes that we have today.
Yep.
But I even for me personally, I evidently have become accustomed to tolerating a certain behavior.
Yeah.
And that is something that's unfortunate. And I will say just one quick story. Do I have time for that?
Yeah, you do.
With respect to Fairview. So our strategic partner that we had was Bigler Investment Management Company, who was an investor in Syncom.
Okay.
Hans Halligan and Peter Siegel.
Yep. And
I will say to you that as we were marketing and some of the things that were said to us while we were marketing Fairview, they were in total disbelief. Some of the things that were said to them publicly and privately. And I said, well, that's the America that we live in every day.
Right.
And
you excused it.
Well, I didn't so much excuse it, but I was saying to them because they just couldn't believe it.
Got it.
And what was so extraordinary, because I want to say this is not just white and black, because there have been extraordinary people, white people, that have done extraordinary things.
Yes.
In the movement, So what I'm saying is that it's partly our responsibility to make sure that we basically get the stories out, express the issues that happen to us, to other people, because a lot of times they don't even assume that those things are happening.
That's
because with respect to Bigler, we could not have had a better strategic partner. There was nothing that they were not willing to do. When it comes to the venture business, once they trusted us, we had an excellent relationship with them. And Hans Halligan wanted to make sure that relationships were vested in the venture business, vested specifically with individuals at Fairview before he retired. That was a mission for him.
Yeah.
And he did it with the highest amount of respect and dignity. And that's really all we're looking for: respect and dignity for who we are. Peter Siegel stayed on the road with us for it took 2.5 years to raise Fairview 1.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, so it's not just a white, black, or Latina or other minorities, but it's respect.
Yeah.
It's being able to respect me for my ability.
Yeah.
Respect me for what you feel I can do. Respect and understand the issues. So part of that is our responsibility. And I will say to you, Bob, that I am surprised in some ways that I'm still surprised.
Right.
To be honest with you. And it makes me wonder whether or not I need to change a little bit and become something in addition to what I am. But I can say this, Bob, without question, we will not make, no, let me say that, we will not continue to make progress, because we are making progress. That's to take away from other generations to say that we haven't, because we are making progress. And there's many who have given their lives for that progress. But we've got to be just as assertive, just as aggressive, and we've got to be able to lean in and make sure it happens, and not to be timid in any way.
Well, you're certainly not timid, and many of the people who blaze this trail have not been timid. And it's very, very clear that much of what we always have been, we have to continue to be. Because I can't tell you, and you're not going to be surprised by this, I can't tell you how many meetings I go in where people act like, this is the first generation to do this, right? And then when they do invest, they're surprised at the performance, and they're amazed at the backgrounds and the pedigrees and the everything. And you just want to say, get over it, please. Just stop acting like this was invented. People of color, African Americans, Latinos, Asians have been doing extraordinary things in this country before its inception.
That's correct.
Right. So to think that we would just be starting that is amazing. We're going to take a little bit more time, JoAnn. I wanted to ask you.
Can I may add one thing, Bob, with respect to the trade association, because I want to give you, really congratulate you on the work that you're doing, because with a trade association and the collective will, being able to take everybody's ability and to take it collectively to build, you have done an outstanding job with you, your team, and the people that work with you, because that's part of the way it's going to continue to happen. And your personality and your perseverance is a testament to what it is we're being able to do.
Well, I thank you very much. That's high praise. It means a lot to me. Thank you. So JoAnn, they sent me a note. They said, let JoAnn know that Ulu's female owner is Miriam Rivera.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So I want to give you an opportunity to acknowledge that. And JoAnn, I would be remiss if I focused on you in the sense that it was all about Fairview all the time. You lead a very balanced life with your family, your church. You're heavily involved in your community, both broadly in the state and in Hartford. You're too humble to brag about any of it. But one of the things that always struck me, and I don't know, obviously, everything that you do, but you spent a lot of time with the Amistad Foundation. Can you tell us what the Amistad Foundation was and why you spend so much time working and supporting it?
Well, the Amistad Center for Art and Culture basically is an organization of Black artists, Black Latino artists, but primarily Black artists around the country, and the culture and our culture all around the country, because our culture is part of what defines our past and our future.
Okay.
And so it's very important that we support our artists, that we are aware of the work that they're doing, and that and not only that we understand how much they are so much a part of our history and our future. So the Amistad here was so important, and it's important that we financially support our organizations, and that's another critical aspect. My most recent journey, because I was chair of the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. And so what I felt was really critical in this area was community safety. And what has been so interesting is the importance for us to be able to go to our communities, to know what's happening in our communities, to be able to extend the helping hand. Because Bob, Fairview would not be in business today without 1,000 helping hands. Trust me on this. And with respect to our community, we need to do that. So I've been working with a few groups. One group that really deals with gun violence and safety, and these individuals that go into the community and are the intersection between the police and the community, and they're community interveners.
Mhm.
So I've been working a lot on that. I go out at night to see what's happening. And of course it scares everybody to death, but I'm out there in the community. But I have to say to you, I'm never afraid to be in my own community.
Right.
And I think that's critical. And I think that's important because we don't have all the gifts. No, there's none of us that have all the gifts.
That's
and
right.
we have to be able to work together collectively to do that. So my latest thing is the Brother Carl Institute, which we are developing, which will be training individuals to be able to work in the community as community interveners. So I'm doing that through the Hartford Foundation. And of course, I'm happy to get all contributions when we start fundraising.
There we go. Please call us. So, JoAnn, you've been super generous with your time. I don't want to cut us off prematurely. Just a word. I came to know your firm, and obviously you and Larry and Ed Shirley and the many other folks that were there. But Fairview has grown a new generation of partners.
Yes.
And could you at least, before we close out, just give note to your new generation of partners and where the firm's headed?
I'm happy to do that. So we have another managing partner who is on the board of NAIC, Kola Olifin-Boba. And as you know him, and he is totally fantastic, well-versed, but is a great leader of the firm as well in terms of how he treats people. We have Alan Matamata, who is a partner at the firm as well. He came from a venture firm on the West Coast, Polaris, to Fairview, and he's been at Fairview 14 years. We have Cindy Sang, who also is another partner at the firm, and she's been with the firm almost the same amount of time. And then we have Akar Vashani, who opened up our West Coast office. We have Kwesi Quay, who is our associate and senior associate, who's fantastic. And then we have a Howard graduate, because as you know, Larry is the chairman of the board of Howard now, and I'm on the board of visitors of the business school. Trey Dawson, who came to us from Howard University, and he is an analyst. So our director of compliance, Crystal Floyd, who's been with us for 14 years. And if you know about a fund of funds, and especially servicing public pension funds, you have to have an excellent compliance regime and regimen, and she is excellent. So the organization, our business development professional, we have two, Michelle Chowtai and Leslie Nettles. Our accountants are excellent. So and the firm is multiracial. So and everybody's comfortable with that and comfortable with what we do. And we want everybody, regardless of their positions, to be able to speak. We want to hear their voice. We want their expertise, and we want to continue to grow a firm like Fairview. And we would hope that others across the country will be able to and will understand how important diversity is in a firm.
Well, JoAnn, we've had a full and fruitful conversation. You've been super generous, knowing how you and I like to talk. I think we could do another hour, but you've been very generous. This was super helpful. But I do want to now close out by thanking you. I want to thank you for your leadership. I want to thank you for your perseverance. I want to thank you for early in my career at this being tough on me and helping me to learn just how important this role is and how what a enormous opportunity it is to direct the collective will that you talked about. Thank you for being such a super supporter. You guys have supported NAIC with time, talent, and treasure. 6 partners at Fairview have served on the board that I know of. You can't ask for more from any organization. And as much as I love the past and the stories, I love Fairview's future as well. And I congratulate you and your partners for concept to development to expansion, and then even the transition that you're working through now. Congratulations, and thank you for your time today, JoAnn.
Thank you, Bob.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.